Hello and welcome! This is Melskunner, and I'm going to be taking a look at a brand new game, Urban Empire, which is a city builder that's a little bit different than the typical city builder, where you play a more godlike character, and as long as you had the resources to make something happen, you just made it happen. In this game, you play the role of a mayor, and you propose things that you want to have done, and then the city council votes on it. Now, you can use your own funds to make things happen directly if you want to, but the city is going to have more resources than you have at your disposal, at least initially, and the city itself is going to have to maintain anything that you build, so you always have to keep that in mind. We'll see how that mechanic works as we jump into things, and we'll be starting a new campaign. Now, I have played the tutorial, but this is my first playthrough, so I have a somewhat basic understanding of how the gameplay works. Now, the first thing we're going to need to do is pick our family. There's 4 families to choose from, and the family I'm going to choose from is the Von Filzens, I think is how you pronounce that. And I apologize if I mispronounce some things, as this does have a European setting, and I may have difficulty with the pronunciation. But the Von Filzens are a landed gentry aristocrats with a strong military tradition and a hardline conservative stance. Their grand manor has steadfastly overlooked the same estate, surrounded by their fields and forests, since the early 14th century. Despite the land belonging to 3 different countries throughout the years, the Von Filzens are traditionalists. They believe in social hierarchy and the people's need for stability in a changing world. There are 3 other families. We have the St. Elias, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right, and they're more progressives. The Kilgannons, which are more populous, and then you have the wild cards, the Shuzkis, which are a foreign implant family, and they don't really have a political leaning, at least that's what it says here. So I guess they're more of a wild card, or they don't really have a stance initially, so you can take whatever stance you want. But we're going to start with the Von Filzens, and we're going to play a more conservative route. Mostly because I think this is going to be a little bit different than what a lot of other people are probably going to do as their initial playthrough. I have a feeling that St. Elias, this family is probably a little bit more popular because of the more progressive and liberal stance. And when you're taking a liberal stance, I guess not necessarily a liberal stance, when you're taking a left stance, it's a lot easier to get things happening quickly. Whereas when you take a right stance, like what we're going to be doing, things develop a little bit more slowly. And I'll explain that a little bit as we get into things, because an understanding of the politics of the game might be a little bit confusing if you don't have a political background. I have a political science major, so I have more of an understanding of this, but if you don't, it might be a little bit more confusing. We're going to select this family, and when we select the family, we start with a family member. Now, I don't know exactly how this happens, but I'm assuming that these people in the background are future family members. And the first family member we have is Gerbert von Filzen. A cruel aristocrat, Gerbert von Filzen puts empire and power before everything. His strict upbringing in a militarized nobility left him emotionally repressed. While respected, he does not tolerate incompetence and deals ruthlessly with insubordination. Gerbert is a loyal man who believes the emperor has a God-given right to rule. He will protect the realm and no one will stand in his way. So he is cruel, which has some stat effects. Goodwill goes down, security goes up. We have Luddite. This is going to, it says here, you believe that the slower the change, the happier the society. And again, as I said, we're going to probably have a more slow progression. But the effects that we have here is schools have a reduced effectiveness as far as brain power. Personal growth for elites and middle class is also reduced. Elderly security, though, goes up. Security overall goes up. Liberal Party's Goodwill Resting Point +2, and Conservative Party Goodwill Resting +4. Now, the one thing I will criticize this game for, at least initially from what I've seen, is explaining what some of these attributes mean. I don't really know what Goodwill Resting Point means. If I were to guess, I would assume that maybe that's the maximum goodwill that you can have with a party, but that's a guess. And there are some things that just fail to have tooltips, so I really don't know what they are, and we're just going to have to guess from the context. And the last trait we have is Emperor's Nominee, and I think most of the families have this, from what I've seen, but you're nominated to your position by the Emperor himself, and thus cannot be voted out. Now, from what I understand, we're in a land called Sorelia, and we'll see that after we choose our family member here. So this is our location. So we're part of the Sorelian lands, which is within, I'm guessing, the Austro-Hungarian Empire. And we have 3 locations we can choose. I'm going to choose the first one because I think this is more or less the base start. But it says, located on the big plains of the Sorelian coast, This location provides the new city plenty of room to grow. Covered in thick forest, the land offers the new mayor endless possibilities to develop their city into Sorelia's crown jewel. I have turned off the tutorials, as I've already kind of seen it. I don't know if I went all the way through the tutorial, but the tutorial was rather time-consuming, and I think I understand the basics. So let's start the campaign. Okay, so the first thing we're going to need to do is set up our starting district. And from there, then we're going to need to choose our, more or less our research that we're going to work on. And then we can go from there and we can see some of the more of the mechanics. So we're going to start off. This is the name of the city that they've given me, Kaisershafen. I'm going to change that name, and I'm going to change it to, let's call it, we'll keep Hafen. We'll call it Maushafen. You are Gerbert von Filzen, 24th Margrave of Filzen, loyal subject of the Emperor, His Imperial Highness Francis II of Austria. He appoints you to build a new city to connect Vienna to the Adriatic, so we're off of the Adriatic coast. You are granted 500,000 thalers to set the foundations of the new city. So that 500,000 is right here in my personal funds. So it's saying right now, create first district. It does not allow me to progress time until I do that. And I think a good location for a first district is going to be along this beach, along this curved road here. And to build that district, we just hit create district. And we can draw it along here. So I'll start it, let's say about here, and then we just draw a box. And we see it green now, because that means that we can legally place this. Now, there is a set size for districts. So we'll see, if we go too big, it says district too large. So I'm going to do that. Ooh, district area too large. And we also have a legal shape, it's saying. All right, so we'll change the size here slightly. Matter of fact, all you have to do is just click on an area and drag it. Still saying illegal shape. We had it there for a second. You'll know it's illegal because you'll see the, as you might have saw earlier, some streets. Wonder what's going on. Maybe I drew it over here too far? Not sure why all of a sudden it's giving me an illegal shape penalty. Okay, let me redraw it. For whatever reason, we're having a little bit of an issue there. It was fine for a while, and then it was just giving me all kinds of problems. There we go. That's probably... They're good. It's going to cost us 348,000. Now, technically speaking, I would like another, I guess I will have to do 351,000. Oh. Aha. Okay. Did it again. All right. Let's try that again. Third time's a charm. I had it, and then I must have accidentally drawn it out into an illegal shape. Okay. That looks good there. Huh. I had no problem with doing this in the tutorial, and... well, we'll move it a little bit. I mean, really what you're looking for is just the streets to snap. I'm trying to get as big of a district as I can. Maybe working along this curve is what's causing us a lot of the issues. Okay, now the district area is too large. It looks like it's cooperating with me a little bit better. It was probably just that weird curve was causing us a little bit of issues. All right, there we go. Now we have it where we want it. Okay, so this is our district, and we have the streets laid out. That's what this grid pattern is. So I'm going to confirm the land plan. It's going to cost me $355,000 plus $41,000 a month. And this is going to come from my personal funds, at least for this initial district. This is the city money here, which is at $1 million. So we'll confirm that. Did I miss the part where we could change its name? Maybe I haven't gotten to that yet. We also want to place a service, the city hall, because this is our first district. And we'll be placing that. I'll put it roughly in the middle. Now there are different district types. We have mixed area, which is mostly going to be commercial. We have residential area, and we have industrial area. And it's more or less green, blue, yellow for that. Mixed area is when your percentage is low enough that it's going to be a little bit of both. More than likely, it's going to be both residential and commercial. So I'll put my city hall right... Actually, I'll move it up a little bit. Let's put it there. And we have that done. So it's going to cost us an additional $25,000 and cost us another $5,500 a month. Confirm those services. So we get that updated, $380,000 cost and $447,000 a month. We're going to propose this district, and now we can rename it if we want. And I'm going to be super creative here, and I'm going to call this district the first district. Okay, so we're being imperial, and everything is going to be ordered and named by number. So first. Okay, so use personal funds. This is the only choice we have. In the future, when we build other districts, we'll be able to put it up to a vote, and then that will come from the city's funds rather than my own. I always have the option to do this, though, whenever I'm building a district or something like that. So we're going to use personal funds. The next thing we're going to need to do is we're going to need to take our tech in the progress cloud. And here we have different eras, 1 through 5, and this is more or less, time periods. And the first era we're in, these are the texts we have to choose from. Now, we can only start from the central point, so we can't do photography, for instance, until we do telegraph. And if we click on one of these, we can see what it does. So we have newspapers, church, shoe store, and then unlock spread selection. Now, what this does, it allows me to choose how much of a district is residential, commercial, and industry. When I set up that first district, I didn't have that choice, so it automatically chose 60% residential, 10% commercial, and 30% industry. In the future, we'll be able to tailor that to our needs. Some of the other text we have is gas infrastructure, which not only allows you to do gas infrastructure itself, so this is going to put gas lines throughout the district. We also can set up gas lights in the street, and so on. We have safety authorities, which is going to have a number of edicts. So, for instance, ban prostitution. I think that's pretty self-explanatory, but it's going to have a number of effects on your population. And then we also get a new service, a clinic. Thermodynamics, we have steam power that we now have access to. We have a clothing store that gets unlocked. We can build another service, police station. And then we can build a railway station as well, which is a special building. And that's pretty much it initially. Now, I'm going to choose telegraph because as a conservative role, I think churches would be nice. And then also, I love the unlock of the spread selection. So that's another reason why I want to take this first. You have to be careful with some of these because, gas infrastructure on one hand might be cool, but on the other hand, this is something that you have to pay for, and it can be draining maybe in the early stages of the game. Whereas this, you can take advantage of it without it really costing you anything. Granted, you have to pay for the district being built, but at the same time, this itself has no cost associated to it, and it's a nice effect to have. So we'll start this research, and now we can more or less... oh, I didn't mean to do that. We can exit into the city view. That's what I wanted to do. All right, we're going to have to wait for our city to establish itself before we go too much into the details here. Right now, we don't have any population. We'll see that go up. These are our demands. So we have residential demand, commercial demand, and industry demand. These things we don't really, we shouldn't really pay too much attention to because it will fluctuate quite quickly here. So let's just go ahead and start time. And we can go a little bit quicker too, just to get these things built up. So we're going to see population is going to start coming up here. We're going to see our demand start fluctuating. And now that we have some element of population established here, we can start talking about some of the other elements of the game. All right, so even though we did not spend any of our, or we spent all of our own money to set up that district, we can see that we're losing money here because the city itself has to upkeep anything that we built. So as much as we can build whatever we want, we still have to keep in mind the upkeep is going to be paid by the city. Other things that we have across the board is we have city happiness, and this is just a general tallying of all of these other traits to give you an overall, satisfaction that your city has. You have social life, you have security, you have environment, you have health, you have personal growth, and finally we have fun, and then we have the monthly budget balance. So right now we're in the negatives because we don't have much coming in. Now, ways that we can make money, mostly for us, is just through taxes. Now, technically, it's not us making the money, it's a city making the money. We make money through an allowance, which we can actually adjust ourselves. Now, how do we do all of that stuff? Well, let's go ahead and go over the city council. The city council is how we get a lot of things done, and there are currently 3 parties in the city council, and we can click on each one. So this is one of the parties, and it is, again, I'm probably going to mispronounce some of these things, Physiocratic Party, and it is a left-wing, it has left-wing policies, but it is also conservative. So we can see that here. So it leans to the left, but it's also conservative. Now, this might be confusing to you if you're familiar with, at least from my background, American politics. Usually when you're talking left and right, a lot of people might confuse left and right with liberal and conservative, which are separate things in this game. More or less, the best way to explain this is how a big of government, or how supporting of big government the party is, left or right, that is. So a left-leaning party is going to want to spend money. A right-leaning party is going to want the government not really to get involved as much. They want small government. They don't want to spend a lot of money on government. So that's more or less the left and right. And then conservative and liberal is more social things. So that's kind of the easy way to explain it. So if we go over to our next party, they're more or less right in the middle. They're neither conservative or liberal, they're neither left or right. And then finally we have, I didn't even say what the party was. It's the National Swarelian Party. And then finally we have the Free Democratic Party, which is right-leaning but liberal. So that's kind of an interesting dynamic that we have that. You might expect more a right conservative and a left liberal, but that's not what we see here. We also, if we go back to the initial party we looked at, we have how many council members they have. So right now, the Physiocratic Party is the largest party. We have party values, so they like health services. And then we have their current support. And they're neutral towards the National Party, but they're unsupportive of the Free Democratic Party over here. And we see the same here, neutral here, unsupportive here. They have 26 council members. Their party values are around security services. And finally, we have the National Swarelian Party. They like education. They have only 7 members, so they're a very small party at the moment. And this is where their support comes from, and so on. And we also have a goodwill mechanic. Now, goodwill is how much the party likes you. Right now, we have 1 with every party because we haven't really done anything with these parties. Now, how this gets spent is when a vote happens, and we'll see how that happens in detail. But we can propose things through here as well. For instance, if we had access to edicts, we could activate edicts. We can raise taxes if we want to. Now, again, this would kind of go against what we're stating that we're going to do, which is be right conservative. Right being that we don't want big government, so we don't want a lot of taxes. And then conservative, we'd be leaning more towards conservative values. So that's why it's going to be slower for us, because we're going to have less income. We're going to have less taxes. So the left-leaning strategy is you have a lot of taxes, but you use those taxes to put them into services and, things like that to enrich the public. But if you go too far with that, you can actually hurt the public because you're going to make it so they can't really afford much. The people can't afford to buy goods, and if the people aren't buying goods, the businesses are going to struggle, and they're having to pay taxes too, so they might go out of business. So you can't get too carried away with taxes. I could raise taxes a little bit here to gain some income if I wanted to, but right now we're just going to be patient, and we'll just wait on things a little bit. We'll have our opportunity to vote and everything. So let's just have time go by. the amount of income we're going to have is going to change. We're going to have losses initially, but as we have more people come in, we fill out our demand, things will start to turn around. So right now we still have an industry demand and we have residential demand, but we're negative on commercial demands, which means that we pretty much have none of that. But we can see population's going up quite a bit. Our losses are starting to drop. And eventually this will probably turn into a profit. If we really need the money, we can start working on that. But see, now we have a positive balance. I didn't need to do anything for that. I just waited for the district itself to build up. Now, the one thing we can see, and we did get a message there, we have a fight in the council. So this is something, these are events that happen that we can act upon. So Free Democrat Councilor Mr. Varga attacked Physiocrat Councilor Mr. Weintrinker after a heated dispute. As mayor, you are expected to comment. So as we saw earlier, if I'm going to roleplay my character, he's cruel. He doesn't like people messing around. So let's see what we have. We have it was nothing, and oftentimes you don't really know what these things are going to do until you do them. Are strictly condemn violence in the council. Councilor Varga must be a madman. And then tell the press that managing the council feels like hurting a bunch of pigs. I have a feeling that that's probably what our character would do, because it would either be that or do nothing about it. I don't think strictly condemn violence would maybe be the way that he would go. I mean, he's very iron-fisted. That seems kind of counter to his personality. So either I would say lackadaisical about it, or he would say, you know, this. I'm going to say this, although it probably will piss people off. All right, so points. Okay, so we got some populist traits. See, again, you don't really know how these things are going to affect us. So that's interesting. Okay. And again, I don't know exactly how that works, but I'm assuming that we can adjust our traits here. So it's possible we would gain a populist trait here if we kept doing populist choices. Oh, we have another thing. This is based off of the technology. This is yet another event. So the city administration is formulating regulations on telegraph usage as the city is about to be connected to the Continental Telegraph Network. Do you prioritize municipal usage or private use of the telegraph? I'm going to say private use of the telegraph. And as a result, change in monthly city fund expenses for post offices, if we ever establish post offices, are reduced by 25%. So that means, if I'm assuming this correctly, post offices are now cheaper for us. So that was kind of a good thing in a way. Now it's possible the other choice would have been just as good, just for something different. Now the one thing that we can see here is industry demand is quite high. Now I'm not going to want to build another district, which I could get more industry with if I did, quite yet. I think it's probably a good idea to wait until we get this research so that we can unlock the spread selection and focus predominantly on industry, not so much residential, because we don't have any demand for that. Okay, mayor's cruelty. Well, we are cruel. A local newspaper just nominated you as the cruelest mayor in Swarelia. How do you feel about this? All right, we're going to angry, have the newspaper's editor sent to prison, or ashamed. Now, we cannot be sad because we're not progressive. So, yeah, we're cruel. Send him to prison. So what's the effect? Bonus to security service. For the middle class, they feel less secure. I guess that makes sense. And then overall, we became even more cruel. And you kind of see how that works. Now, because we dropped security, more than likely we also lost happiness. So that's kind of the balance you play. One thing I might want to pass here is in our district. So let's do a vote here. Let's modify the district. And what I would like to do is I'd like to set up a grammar school. What this is going to do is it's going to help us in this category, personal growth. It also, I think, adds in brain power, so it will give us research a little bit quicker. And we can see the support overall of this. So it looks like both the National Swarelia Party and the Physiocratic Party will be in support of this. The Free Democratic Party, not so much. But again, small government. They don't like to spend money on things like this. Now, let's set it up. Now, I didn't pay too much attention to where our residential was, and right now what we're seeing is we're seeing an area of effect of this building. So the yellow area is to a lesser extent, and the green area is where most of that bonus to the local population is going to be had. So we want to have this somewhere close to a residential area. And if I remember correctly, these are all industrial up here, and then this was kind of mixed up here, and then our residential's down here. So I'm going to move this over here. Now we could do this keeping future districts in mind. So if we had more residential over here, then this overall area will play a part. I think I'm going to put it right about here. So this is going to cost 125,000, and it's going to have a running cost of 14. Now, I could just build this myself like I did in the past, and we wouldn't have a vote. We do see that it has changed a little bit, though, the support of this. So mostly just going to be the Physiocratic Party that's going to be in support of this. So we're going to confirm this service, and we're going to propose this. And now we get to choose. In what way are we going to propose it? So we see the support here. It looks like most people are going to be in approval of this. So we're not going to have to work too hard to get this to pass. But if I wanted to use my personal funds, I could do that, and I wouldn't even have to do the vote. But it looks like it's going to pass anyway, so let's do the normal vote. Now, if I do this, who's going to be footing the bill entirely is going to be the city. I'm not going to foot any amount of the bill. So let's go ahead and confirm that. Ooh. And then, now we can modify how much this is going to pass. So, as we already can see, this is for sure going to pass. But what happens if there was somebody that was over here that wasn't really too accepting of this? Well, what I would do is I'd go to appeal parties. And usually, the earlier you do this in the voting process, the more powerful it's going to be. But you can only do it so many times. So, what I would do is I'd click on a party. Let's say I would click on these guys, because they're not really for it. I have three choices right now. I can plead them, I can demand, or I can threaten. Now, obviously, these are different strengths of effectiveness. And what this is going to cost me potentially, not all the time, is goodwill. And the lower my goodwill is, the more unhappy this party is going to be with me, and the more unwilling they are going to be to go along with my demands. And as we saw earlier, because of my cruel trait, I have less goodwill overall as well, so it's going to be hard to convince parties, at least with my character, than it normally would be. But for the moment, I really don't have to push these guys one way or the other, because again, we can see. But right now, to also explain what this is saying, this is how many of the council members have already decided they're going to vote against it. This is how many are undecided. And this is how many have already decided they're going to vote for it. So in theory, with the undecided votes, this could go against me. But we also have the balance of power here. And we have the overall party support. And usually, people are going to follow their party line unless they really, for whatever reason, aren't going to support it. I guess you're always going to have some council members that are not in support of something. But that's more or less how the vote works. And we'll see those mechanics in more detail later when I actually have to fight for a vote, but this time around it's an easy pass. So we'll progress the game until, well, first we're going to get the telegraph. That's the first thing we're going to get.
Invention breeds invention. No sooner is the electric telegraph devised than gutta percha, the very material it requires, is found. Okay, so let's go on to our progress cloud, and we have a new choice we can do. I'm going to go from telegraph to thermodynamics. So it's just going to open another store for us, but it also allows us to have the police station and the railway station. So I'm going to start this research, and then let's go back to the city view, and I'm just going to progress a little bit here until we have this vote. And it's always going to pause the game when there's a vote. So we click on this, we see more or less where the support is now. More people are decided, and it looks like even if every single undecided person swung over and voted against it, we would still get this. So let's begin the voting. We'll see how it is going to happen here. We see all three parties were in support of it, and it was a pretty, crushing victory there. And There we go. Easy enough. Now, there are going to be some things that affect how likely something is to pass. And oftentimes, cost plays a part in this as well. If you're in debt, it's going to be a lot harder to convince the council members to spend more money. So that's one thing you have to keep in mind. Even if, for instance, the Physiocratic Party over here was in support of something normally, they're not going to be so they're not going to be as much in support of it as if you're running a debt. And a party that would be more on the fence is going to be much more against it, and you're going to have a lot harder time passing something in those cases. So now that we have that built, we see personal growth is no longer negative, and we no longer have negative city happiness. So as we improve the city, we'll start improving some of these stats, and we'll improve the city overall. Well, I think this is a good point to go ahead and put a cut in the video. So I hope you guys have enjoyed. This is Mouse Gunner, signing out.